Hey everyone, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into something really special, the anatomy of a nightmare. We're going to take a deep dive into the sheer storytelling mechanics of an absolutely chilling Siberian survival narrative. You know, this is one of those stories that just flawlessly blends ancient folklore with the high-octane pacing of a modern psychological thriller. And together, we're going to break down exactly how the author engineers this terror literally from the ground up. Let's get into it.
Right off the bat, the author hooks us by rooting the horror in something we all understand, sensory folklore. I mean, just imagine the heavy, comforting aroma of your grandmother's cooking, right? Like a warm pot of pelmeni simmering on the stove. But then, imagine taking that warm domestic memory and twisting it into a childhood threat. Eat it up, or the Volkolak will get you. It's such a brilliant storytelling move. It grounds the supernatural in this everyday, tangible reality right before completely pulling the rug out from underneath you.
So, what does this all mean for the story? Well, the author takes this super unsettling question, what happens when the myths we use to scare children turn out to be real, and uses it as the absolute foundation for the entire narrative. What if those old wives' tales were actually warnings? It's from this one single seed of an idea that they build this massive, terrifying storytelling architecture that completely traps the protagonist, and honestly traps us as the audience too.
Section 1. Isolating the protagonist.
Okay, so step one in any great thriller is isolation, right? Look at how the physical setting here, this brutal, unforgiving Siberian wilderness, is engineered specifically to strip the main character of literally all his safety nets. It perfectly illustrates the clash of his two realities. On one hand, you have the protagonist's modern world. We're talking Canon R6 cameras, wireless flash triggers, the general comforts of city life. But then on the other hand, you have the ancient world of his guide, Yuri, dragging an 80-pound sleigh through extreme freezing temperatures, heading to a tiny cabin that needs a roaring fire just to survive the night. This stark visual contrast is absolutely crucial. It traps the protagonist, and it makes us feel his vulnerability intensely as his modern comforts just completely fail against the ancient reality of Yuri's isolated cabin.
Section 2. Building narrative tension.
So once our guy is trapped, the storytelling really starts to rely on this steady drip of escalating dread. The author pairs these super unsettling dreams with physical evidence in the waking world to just slowly turn up the heat. Notice how this sequence deconstructs the suspense. The protagonist falls back on his grandmother's lore, right? He creates this protective ring of salt around his bed. But the author totally subverts that classic protective circle trope. In the nightmare, the monster doesn't just bump into a magical barrier and give up. No, it problem solves. It recoils at the salt, grabs a burning stick from the fire, physically brushes the salt aside, and makes a gap so it can enter and feed. It's this terrifying little mini-narrative of the Volkolak breaching his absolute last line of defense.
And that leads us to this horrific realization. This is such a crucial plot beat. When the protagonist wakes up exhausted and actually finds a sore spot on his neck right alongside that physically broken salt ring on the floor, oh man, he realizes the horrifying dreams are actually real. Boom. The stakes are instantly raised from this creeping psychological dread to immediate, lethal danger.
Section 3. The subversion of trust.
The story pivots so dramatically right here. The protagonist realizes he isn't some cool photographer hunting for a monster anymore. He is the prey being served up on a silver platter. The storytelling shifts from a simple expedition into this incredibly tense cat-and-mouse game inside the claustrophobic walls of that tiny cabin. But here's the genius part. The author doesn't just make the protagonist a passive victim. Instead, they empower him to use his grandmother's old advice to trust no one so he can outsmart Yuri. Just look at these survival tactics. Faking a sip and pouring the drugged tea out behind his bed, pretending to be asleep so he can listen to Yuri's movements, concealing his heavy camera gear right under the blankets. I mean, it is a spectacular display of tactical storytelling and thinking under pressure.
Section 4. A flash of survival.
All of this setup leads us directly into a frankly stunning climax. The author ingeniously uses the protagonist's specific profession and tools, his camera gear, as his exact mechanical weapon for survival. The tension just snaps. The emaciated Volkolak is looming directly over him, reaching for the blanket. And what does he do? The protagonist bolts upright, swings his camera up, and fires the speedlight directly into the face of the rotten beast.
That blinding light completely disorients the monster. It stumbles backward, shrieking in pain,
This is just a perfect show-don't-tell storytelling mechanic. It's tactical survival that seamlessly pays off the camera equipment we saw him meticulously preparing earlier in the ice cave. Such a great payoff.
And he doesn't even hesitate. The rapid-fire narrative rhythm continues as the protagonist snaps a second picture. The intense burst of light keeps the shrieking, star-blinded Volkolak at bay.
And right here, Yuri's facade shatters completely. This moment perfectly exposes the hermit's absolute panic. As Yuri crashes into the oven and cold water splashes everywhere, we are literally watching his carefully curated, deadly trap fall apart right before his eyes.
So, the protagonist waits. He waits until the beast is perfectly positioned, right in front of the fire, and then delivers the final, decisive mechanical strike.
The blinded beast tumbles backward directly into the roaring campfire. This concludes the climax with an unbelievable moment of poetic justice. You see, in the monster's panicked, burning thrashing, its massive talon accidentally slices Yuri's stomach wide open. The beast effectively kills its own master in the chaos. It's a brutal but perfectly executed resolution to the immediate threat.
Section 5. Uncovering the horrific truth.
Okay, so with the monster fleeing into the snowy night, we can finally process the story's chilling twist, and this twist completely reframes the entire narrative we just experienced. While hiding, the protagonist notices the Volkolak furiously circling the cabin. It's peering through the door, but it refuses to enter. This introduces a classic rule of folklore, the invitation. You know the rule, a monster cannot cross a threshold unless actively welcomed by the owner. Well, because Yuri is dead, the cabin is no longer his, and that invitation is revoked. This proves, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that Yuri was the one inviting the beast in every single night. It adds this incredibly terrifying layer of human betrayal to the grandmother's lore. The monster, it was just a hungry animal. Yuri was the true evil, facilitating the slaughter all along.
And the grim inventory he finds uncovers the gruesome reality of Yuri's operation. When the protagonist lifts a trapdoor hidden beneath the table, he discovers an inventory of absolute horror. Passports belonging to missing travelers, wallets stripped from past victims, stolen jewelry hidden away under the floorboards. The author uses this physical evidence to solidify that this wasn't just some monster hunt gone wrong. No, it was a calculated, serial sacrifice. Yuri was deliberately luring people who were desperate to find a myth, only to feed them to it.
Which leaves us with this final, chilling thought to wrap up the explainer. The Volkolak was the literal monster with fangs and claws, for sure. But who was the true architect of the nightmare? It really forces us to ponder the dark nature of storytelling and human betrayal. It's a stark reminder that sometimes the most dangerous predators aren't the ones hiding in the dark woods. They're the ones smiling at you across a warm fire. So I urge you, look a little closer at the mechanics of the next thriller you read, because the real terror is almost always hiding in the details. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. I'll catch you next time.